What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Crypto Catch Up with me, Benny. Tonight's video, we're going to go through a question from the Crypto Australia community where Tony Moon asked, essentially, how secure are Bitcoin private keys? And that's something that the general community kind of wonders quite a lot. They go, digital currency, it's not tangible. How secure could it possibly be? I see things getting hacked all the time. And the reality is that it's impossible in today's age to be able to break into a Bitcoin private key. And that's what we're going to go through. So let's check it out. All right. So with a bit of background, something that makes up a Bitcoin private key is what's known as public key cryptography, or also known as asymmetric cryptography. And that's this picture here, essentially, something where you generate a public and a private key. Now, back in the day, there used to be something called symmetric cryptography, where essentially if Alice sent something to Bob, she would encrypt that, but she would have to give that same key to unencrypt it to Bob. Now, obviously, if you're away at distances, that's really hard to do because it means you've got to send that key over the web, exposed, possibly to be hacked, and therefore they came up with, this public key cryptography, which uses a public and private key pair. Now, in this picture here, you take plain text, you encrypt it with the public key, which turns it into ciphertext, and then from there, you can obviously decrypt it there with the private key. Now, a private key is used in Bitcoin to sign transactions to prove that you own an account, because in Bitcoin, the public key is actually your account address, something that you can give to everyone to, see how much money you have, or to prove that you're the owner of a particular account when you utilize it with that private key. So, Bitcoin uses something called the ECDSA, or the Elliptic Curve Digital Signature Algorithm. Now, it looks a bit like this. This is an elliptic curve. Now, we're not going to go through the math behind it because it's extremely complicated. Because it's based on a range of parameters in Bitcoin, and they've been carefully chosen. It's always very interesting to understand, why did they choose these particular parameters? Well, these are the parameters that were chosen as a part of Bitcoin to make up that elliptic curve when it's utilized with what's known as SEC P256 K1. Now, this here is something that was never used really, or at all prior to Bitcoin coming along, but now has garnered a bit of, famous, nature about it because of its use case within Bitcoin. The reason why that might be, though, is it's actually 30% computationally, faster than a lot of the other algorithms or parameters that you may utilize when you're doing digital signatures, I should say. So, how is a Bitcoin private key made? Now, this is, not the full list of everything, but it's to give you an idea anyway. So, one way you can go about it is essentially you want random data to begin with. You want something that, hasn't just been, generated, like Ben is a cool cat, very easy to guess, of course. So, what you could do is flip a coin. Flip it 160 times, and you'd get the ones and the zeros, a 1, 1, 0, 0, 0. You do that, obviously the chance of you ever landing that same number again is so low. Now, it just needs to be a number between 1 and 2 to the power of 256. Now, I've highlighted that number because that is the number of attempts that you would have to break a private key, which we're going to go into. They then hash that number from the first step with SHA-256, so secure hashing algorithm. They then hash it again with RIPE-MD, which once again, another algorithm. They add the version number, so Bitcoin private keys always have a 5 at the start of it. They then add a checksum by double SHA-256ing it, so double hashing it again with that algorithm. The reason why they need a checksum is to remove, typing errors and then we convert it at the very end to base 58. Now, once again, to remove typing errors. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're looking at these large as numbers, a 0 and a O can be obviously indistinguishable sometimes because it's all in uppercase. That is what base 56 removes. So there's, no kind of, oh, is this a 0, is this a 9, a 6, that kind of thing. That's what it looks like on the right hand side. Alright, back to this number, 2 to the power of 256. Now, I'm no mathematician, but it's actually an extremely large number. So let's go through an example to make it clear how large these numbers are that we're talking about. So if we had some doors, there's 7 doors on your screen, and it was public, and I put all my money inside this door here. If you out there in the world were wanting to, go through and find my account, it wouldn't take you very long in the day to go through 7 different doors. But what about if I took you here and I made it available to everybody in the world to go through? So even if it was just 1 or 2 people, you might be able to cover this many doors in a day. But that number's just simply not big enough for me as a private key holder to be able to sleep easy at night, knowing that no one's going to be able to what is known as brute force my public key. And now the only way to work out what a Bitcoin's private key is, or I should say brute force a private key, the only way to work out this number, so if you have a public key and you want to, get into that public keys account, the only way to do it is to go through a number of combinations, one after the other, until you come up with the exact match that is required, which is what I'm talking about here with these doors. So, you could go through all of those doors and you go, Ben, he's done for, he put it in this door here. We found it only took us a day with 3 people to do so. But obviously, the more doors we add, or the larger the number that we add, it makes it harder. So what about if I told you about these doors? Then if we gave it to more people, once again, you still might be able to get through that many doors in a day, but I'm making it harder for you to be able to crack the code. It might take you 3 days, might take you 4 days. So we need a number so large that you wouldn't be able to do it with any computer in any amount of time. So what do I mean? Well, let's take the 7 odd billion people that are in the world today. Let's say they're able to go through 1 billion doors a day each for 365 days over 100 years. That gives you a number around 260, 10 to the power of 21 sextillion. So 260 sextillion essentially, which is a very, very large number. It's actually equivalent to the number of grains of sand on the Earth, according to Wolfram Alpha, which is a great online tool. So what about if I said, 10 to the power of 29? How could that number look? Well, that would mean that you would have 1 in 1 million chance in 100 years to crack that Bitcoin private key. What about 35? Well, 1 in 1 trillion in the 100. What about 1 to the 38th? 1 quadrillion in 100 years. What I'm getting at, people, is that Bitcoin's private key is larger than all of this. So no matter how many attempts that you're making, you're only then ever going to be successful to get into one account, and then you've got to start again. And the numbers we're talking about here is 100 years, 1 in 1 quadrillion chance for that 7 billion people doing 100 billion of the 1 billion of those a day. So how big of a number are we talking? Well, I actually found an awesome Medium article on this, and that's what we're going to go to here. So this guy here goes, the odds of guessing a coin toss is 1 in 2, and you kind of scroll down. He goes, the odds of randomly guessing the first character in my private key, 1 in 64. And you keep going down, and we keep going down, and you go, the odds of randomly guessing my credit card number approximately, these large numbers. And we keep going down. And you can see these numbers are getting huge, right? So the odds of you guessing my Bitcoin address, which is public, mind you, private keys are longer. And we keep going down. So the approximate number of atoms on Earth. And we go on and on. And look at these numbers, guys. These are huge numbers. The odds of guessing 209 coin tosses in a row. We're not stopping here. We're going to keep going down. The last thing. The odds of guessing the entire private key. There it is. That is the number. So how big is the number that we're talking? We're talking a number this big. 78, I believe, decimal places. 115, I'm not even going to say it. It's a huge number. The chances of you breaking a Bitcoin private key through brute force with any supercomputer is absolutely zero right now. Now, the question is, will quantum computing be able to brute force at a much faster rate? Of course it will. But then we change the algorithms. Then we change the large size of the numbers and we go bigger. Much bigger. But the thing is, right now, that does not exist. And for you to ever get through to this, you would be dead and it would be absolute wasted time. I hope that answers your question, Tony Moon. It is a huge number. The chance is absolutely zero at this point in time. Obviously, guys, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them below and we'll get you an answer as soon as possible. Cheers.